So I'm taking the position that piracy should be condoned as long as copyright remains in its inbound state. So to make the argument for piracy, I'm going to address the issue from three perspectives: the business perspective, the legal perspective, and the moral perspective. The business perspective is an argument for why businesses should work around piracy rather than attempting to combat it. In the economy of ideas, John Barlow makes the argument that information economics, in the absence of objects, will be based more on relationship than on possession. In other words, those who control a relationship to the information and not the information itself will be more successful in the digital world. Barlow's predictions appear to be true today, as businesses that have adapted to this have been much more successful than those who have not. So one example of this has been the equity research industry. Equity research profits by selling their analysis on public companies. Their expertise is sold in the form of stock reports that can easily be reproduced at no extra cost. However, rather than attempting to fervently protect these stock reports from copyright infringement, they have controlled their expertise on the industries. Now they sell a subscription fee in which clients receive stock reports and have the ability to talk to the analysts to receive additional information on each company. In addition, many of the profits come from trading that clients will conduct after deciding to buy a company's stock. If they had attempted to simply protect their information rather than changing their business model, equity research might not exist today. Another example is the video gaming industry, which has experienced heavy piracy throughout the world, especially in South Korea. In the past, video game publishers would profit by selling the game or the information itself. Today, publishers in South Korea now sell the ability to play the games online instead of just the game. This business model is increasingly being adopted by American video game publishers as well. The best example of this is World of Warcraft, which has earned large profits by charging a monthly fee to play on their servers each month. In contrast, video games like Crysis, which relies heavily on the single-player experience, have become one of the most heavily pirated games in PC gaming and has led the developer to eschew developing PC-exclusive software. While Crysis has done well, the divergent attitudes of the two companies demonstrate how adapting to piracy has the potential to be even more profitable than past business methods. From the legal perspective, the argument emphasizes reducing copyright protections. Neil Netanel is one such proponent for reducing copyright protections. He argues that copyright should serve two functions: incentivizing creative works and supporting a sector of activity independent of state subsidy and cultural hierarchy. These two functions are not necessarily supported with stronger copyright protections. Rather, according to Netanel, the current protections in place should be weakened in order to increase the works available to the public domain. Glenn Lunny has also proposed lowering copyright protections to match those in other fields. Lunny argues that no other creative fields receive the full value of their social contribution. Teachers and researchers contribute greatly to society, but receive a fixed monetary reward. By granting copyright holders a great amount of protection, we run the risk of overinvesting in creative fields such as entertainment, as opposed to other areas that might be more important, such as primary research. Lawrence Liang has gone even further than Lunny and Netanel by arguing for the complete elimination of intellectual property laws. In Steal This Film, he argues that the history of piracy stems from people organizing themselves outside of property and hierarchy. Today, the enforcement of property and law has been a way to maintain control over the production and reproduction processes of creative works, and has led to a loss of culture rather than a gain. The elimination of intellectual property laws will create a society that celebrates commenting and encourages the creation of culture. Finally, the idea of piracy as an immoral act is largely a Western concept that is not shared throughout the world. Traditional Western values place an emphasis on individual rights, whereas Eastern values place more of an emphasis on the collective whole. It would seem then that Eastern cultures may not view copyright as immorally as Westerners would. A study conducted on Singaporeans and Americans confirmed this result. They found that while Singaporeans were actually more knowledgeable than Americans on copyright law, they were also less supportive of copyright laws and more likely to infringe on them. The study also found that Americans were more concerned with the legality of the decision, whereas Singaporeans focused on the consequences of the decision. The authors of the study noted that these results confirm the cultural attitudes towards intellectual property. Eastern cultures view intellectual property as an unfair monopoly on information and thus have a history of sharing works, whereas Americans view intellectual property as a natural right and a reward for their hard work. Therefore, the morality of copyright infringement depends on whether one values the collective good or individual fairness. So, to conclude, condoning piracy makes sense for everyone. From a business perspective, the most successful businesses will be the ones that adapt to the changing environment and change their business models to work around piracy. From a legal perspective, piracy is a way of restoring balance in a system that too heavily favors copyright holders. And from a moral perspective, piracy can be viewed as a moral act if considering the benefits generated to society as a whole rather than the legality of the act.